Hey guys, it's Bernie here. I know it's been a while since I've done a video. I haven't really been doing vault videos just because I haven't really been getting vaults. At this point in the season, we've kind of just been taking a break, taking it easy, mostly raid logging. We're starting to work on Mythic Sark, but I figured with some of these new updates getting pushed out for the PTR, I would record a video, just go over some of the changes. I have like a good bit of experience with all the classes, not necessarily all the specs, but I feel like I have some input for some of this, and maybe you'll find this interesting. But we'll just go ahead and go through some of these changes, give our feedback, and if you guys have anything else you want to add or questions you want to ask, please throw it in the comments. Let's go ahead and get started. There's quite a bit of class changes with this PTR. Oh, we're going to skip over the PvP stuff, so starting with Death Knight. Blood. The 2-set bonus now triggers from consuming runic power, previously triggered on consuming bone shield charges. So this is a pretty good change. I know there were a lot of complaints because when it's based, like when things are triggering on bone shield charges, you have to actively be tanking, which is fine in dungeons because you're obviously the only tank, but in raids, you're only tanking about half the time. So when set bonuses are designed around you getting hit and you're not getting hit for a large portion of the fight, obviously the set bonus is not as good as it could be. So triggering it from runic power is obviously good because that means you'll be able to do it more often. You don't need to actively be tanking. So that's a good change. Frost, the 4-set bonus, chance to trigger reduced to 30% was 40%. Reduces the cooldown of Empower rune weapon by 6 seconds was 10 seconds. So, I mean, it's a slight nerf to their set bonus. I think their set bonus was performing pretty well, so I don't see this being extremely detrimental. It is kind of a big nerf to their 4-set, but I'd have to do some more research on these numbers. And fixed an issue with Chill Streak not decrementing a bounce when it bounced off the Death Knight. So Demon Hunter is going to have a lot of changes just because they're doing the class rework. So yeah, there's going to be a lot to digest here. Developers note, Demon Hunter talent updates will be starting to roll in as they become ready, starting with Havoc tree changes in this week's PTR build. In some cases, talents may be missing or marked as a work in progress, WIP, but there are enough changes to the Havoc tree and individual talents that we'd like to get it in players' hands to begin gathering feedback. Vengeance and class tree changes are coming soon. So we haven't even looked at Vengeance and class tree changes, really. This is just Havoc focused, so still a lot more to come, it looks like. I think a lot of people are excited about these reworks because typically the classes that have been getting reworked have been very spicy. Paladin and Mage come to mind. They have been extremely good after the reworks. So, a lot of good things. I think this patch is supposed to be Demon Hunter and Rogue, so a lot to watch out for there. So, Demon Hunter Spectral Sight cooldown is now 1 minute 30 seconds. This is just a baseline cooldown reduction. I mean, that's fine. I think the important part of this is because with Havoc, you're going to be able to use Spectral Sight to spawn your fodder to the Flame Demon, which when you kill it, gives you the demon buff, which is like, what, 20% damage? So you're going to be able to stack this within your other cooldowns in a window, which is obviously good. So right here, fodder to the Flame Demon now revealed by Spectral Sight. Fodder to the Flame Demon now takes fatal damage from I-Beam and Fell Devastation in addition to Throw Glaive. I mean, this is good. Being able to kill it without having to, tab to it or click on it and throw your glaive is nice. Just cleave it down with I-Beam. Fodder to the Flame buff is now granted immediately upon killing Demon. That's fine. Because it used to be there was a couple seconds delay where you would have to, like, the soul would have to come to you, and then once you had absorbed it, you got the buff. So this just get you the buff instantly, which is nice. Metamorphosis cooldown reduced to 3 minutes, was 4 minutes. This is an extremely good change, wow. So it being 4 minutes is very awkward. There aren't a lot of 4-minute classes anymore. And I think in a lot of raid fights, it's kind of impractical to set up things around 4 minutes, and even 3 minutes is very awkward. I have not personally liked having 3-minute classes. I mean, I play a little bit of Havoc, but I did play Boomkin for a while, and Incarn was exclusively a 3-minute cooldown, and sometimes it was very awkward lining things up properly. I definitely like them going to 1 and 2 minute CDs. I just feel like it fits classes better. And I know that in the class tree, they do have a 1 minute reduction on meta So with that, that would make it a 2-minute baseline, which is really solid. You're going to be able to line up a lot more stuff with meta then. That's good for Havoc. For Vengeance is kind of whatever. It doesn't really matter. Darkness now has a 15% chance to avoid all damage from an attack. Chance to avoid damage increased by 100% when not in a raid. Okay, so it's like a slight nerf to the raid. I think it's 20% baseline now. Obviously, in raid, it sees a lot of play just because when there's lots of periodic damage coming out or lots of big raid hits, when you apply it was 20%, but now 15 to every member of your raid, you are mitigating a lot of damage. I mean, this is used pretty heavily in Mythic progression, for sure. So it's a bit of a nerf in raid. Chance to avoid damage increased by 100% when not in a raid. So does that make this 30% in Mythic then? Mythic Plus? I mean, that's pretty good, because in Mythic Plus, you're obviously getting less value because there's only 5 targets. So having it scale better for groups is always nice. I like when they make these changes. Having things be impactful in raid and shitty in dungeons is not a good feeling, so it'll be nicer to press. First of the Illidari has been removed. I believe this was another cooldown reduction for meta, but it's shared with Demonic, I think, which after using I-Beam, it puts you into meta form for like 6 seconds. And I think all of the builds played that build, or played that talent rather than first of the Illidari. So having this be removed is fine because nobody was playing this anyway. So Havoc specific changes, there's a lot to go over here. Metamorphosis duration reduced 20 seconds, was 24 seconds. I mean, I think that's fine just because the cooldown is still being reduced overall with this change here, so let's commensurate. Demonic Appetite now baseline for Havoc, causes souls to generate 20, Fury was 30. This is just, you're getting souls you're shattering souls when you're using Chaos Strike on targets. So not having to use a talent for it is great. You're just saving a talent. We like that. Another talent to allocate somewhere else. Fell Eruption's now baseline. That's perfect. I know some of the Mythic Plus builds were not taking it, so having a baseline stun is perfect. Everybody likes more group utility. Glaive Tempest cooldown increased to 25 seconds, was 20 seconds. Damage increased by 15%, and damage reduced beyond 8 targets was 5. So you're pressing it less often, but it's doing more damage, and the target cap is increased. I mean, that's just, I think it's a net buff for dungeons. It's going to be way more impactful. Fell Barrage has been redesigned. I don't think people were taking this. So it's no longer channeled. Drains 15 Fury per tick. Lasts until Fury is depleted. Damage reduced beyond 5 targets. I don't really know what to feel about this one, because I haven't really played with Fell Barrage ever. Draining Fury per tick is kind of interesting. So I assume you're going to want to be max Fury, and then you're going to want to fit this into your cooldown window with, Essence Break and Meta and every other buff you've got. Initiative's effect is no longer triggered or denied by damage over time effects. This is the thing where you have to have first strike on a mob. And I'm assuming by this, denied by damage over time effects, it means that raid bosses that apply AoE debuffs, where the raid takes ticking damage, this will no longer prevent you from getting initiative on the boss. So, I mean, it just makes it easier to proc. That's always nice. It's a lot more damage. Momentum now increases damage by 6%, was 8%. Last 6 seconds was 5 seconds, and duration stacks to a max of 30 seconds. So the damage of momentum is a little less, so it's going to be less punishing if you mess up. It's 6 seconds instead of 5, so again, a bigger window for you to use it. Duration stacks to a max of 30 seconds was 10 seconds. Yeah, I mean, this just makes momentum less punishing, which I think a lot of people aren't a fan of this build. I personally don't like the momentum build. I think it's very risky in a lot of places, and you have to play very, very well. New talent, Inertia. When empowered by Unbound Chaos, Fell Rush increases damage by 20% for 5 seconds. I mean, that seems decent. Isn't Unbound Chaos when you use Immo Aura? I'd have to look at that. I don't play enough Havoc to know exactly how good this might be. Fell Rush now enforces global cooldown of 0.5 seconds, was 0.25. So the cooldown, the GCD is slightly longer for Fel Rush. Fel Blade now enforces a global cooldown of 0.5 seconds, was 1.5. Well, that's nice. Because a lot of times people are using Fel Blade for like a mini charge to the boss. So having that be a shorter GCD is nice. It's not taking up a full global anymore. New talent, Deflecting Dance. Blade Dance deflects incoming attacks, absorbing damage up to 15% of your max health. That seems really strong as like kind of it's like a mini active mitigation. Kind of like Priest had like 10% off, 10% DR on their fade. I mean, that's nice. And even if you're not actively pressing it, it's like a nice little passive built in. I can see that being useful. New talent of Fire Inside. Immolation R has 1 additional charge and 30% chance to refund a charge when activated. You can have multiple Immo Auras active at a time. Wow. That seems really, really busted in dungeons. 1 additional charge and 30% chance to refund. And you can have multiple active at the same time. Interesting. Okay, that could be pretty fun to play with. Just stacking Immo Auras, proccing off each other. Felfire Heart talent has been removed. I don't remember what talent this is, to be totally honest. I'd have to look. Felrush damage increased by 60%? Sure. I mean, free damage increase. And then here, there's what, 5, 6 talents being reduced from 2 points to 1 point. And it seems like their damage is being nerfed to compensate. It's like Unbound Chaos is now a 1 point talent. Was 2. Increases Dex Felrush damage by 250%. Was 200 and 400%. So you're getting more value for 1 point. But it's less overall damage than 2. But I mean, that just means you can allocate points somewhere else, allow you more build flexibility. So I assume you being able to get more talent is going to be enough to overcome this damage loss. And we've got the same thing for Critical Chaos, Dancing with Fate, Blind Fury. So stuff just being nerfed from 2 points to 1 point, and then giving you about 1.5 of the talent's worth in damage. I mean, that seems okay. Having, 5 or 6 more points to play with is always nice. I don't know how that's going to change builds. I assume a lot of it is going to be more Immo Aura focused because of this. Things like that. Isolated Prey has been adjusted. No longer causes Felrush to grant Fury. Now causes Immolation Aura to deal 30% increased damage. Yeah, so they're just stacking more damage on Immo Aura. That's fine. I don't think Felrush granting Fury was... I don't know. I don't enjoy Felrushing, so I'm fine with them moving stuff. Vengeance. Chance to trigger the 2-set reduced for each target beyond the first. It's probably good. Having stuff where you're incentivized to pull Gigantic because it just makes your set bonus multiply out of control is a little ridiculous. I don't know exactly what their set bonus is. I'm assuming it's soul fragments when you're shattering, but I'd have to actually look. So some druid changes. Guardian's Druid's Rage generation scales exceptionally well with large numbers of targets, often resulting in resource saturation. So this is exactly what I was talking about with Vengeance, is like the more you pull, the more rage you have, the easier it is to stay alive, so you're incentivized to like always pull gigantic packs. And this is because of Blood Frenzy, which it appears they're changing. This is probably a good change. This adjustment to Blood Frenzy is meant to tone down raged income in scenarios with large target counts. Thrash's rage generation from Blood Frenzy now has a target cap. It was previously uncapped. So they haven't said what the target cap is. I'm kind of curious. Honestly, it probably should be like 5 or 8. So that's like, 1, maybe 2 packs in Mythic Plus. Being uncapped is a bit ridiculous because if you notice in large pulls where you're able to spam Rage or Thrash very often, you have like pretty much unlimited Rage, especially under Incarn, which made Druids kind of unkillable, and the larger packs you pulled, the safer it was, generally speaking. So this being capped is good. It's going to make Druid less of an outlier, especially in dungeons. And obviously you want to see more tank representation in dungeons. You don't want it to just be Druid and DH. So the 2-set Dreamthorns now absorbs 25% of damage dealt to you while active, was 10%. Dreamthorn's duration increased to 45 seconds. I think people were saying that this was kind of a lackluster set bonus. So it being buffed is kind of nice. It doesn't seem like it's that massive of a buff. It's going to make it overpowered or anything, but you take what you can get. So Restoration. Cenarius' guidance no longer spawns an additional Grove Guardian at the beginning of Incarn Tree of Life. Cenarius' guidance now reduces cooldown of Incarn Tree of Life by 5 seconds when a Grove Guardian fades, and Grove Guardians are now present on the totem bar. I haven't played Resto this season, so I can't really comment on how good this is going to be. When I was playing Resto, you weren't even using Tree of Life. It was kind of a garbage cooldown, so I'm assuming the set bonus is balanced around this, and they're trying to incorporate this talent being used more, and this is just tuning around that. It does look like you're going to get Incarn back a little faster. 5-second reduction as opposed to a 4-second reduction. Evoker, Augmentation. Of course, we're going to see some more augmentation here. They're extremely strong. Augmentation's contributions to the party, particularly in Mythic Plus, are too impactful and are making it difficult for other compositions to shine. As a result, we're doing some targeted nerfs to their group utility by reducing the value of Aspect's Favor, Molten Blood, and Ebon Might. So these are obviously the group buffs. These are some of the utility that Augmentation provides. And right now, it's just really difficult for other classes to kind of sneak in because Augmentation is basically a permanent slot in high keys. They just do a little too much. Let's see what they're changing, though. Aspect's Favor increases maximum health by 2 and 4%, was 3 and 6. This is a passive aura that they have, so you're just going to have less group-wide HP. Molten Blood absorption reduced by 50%. This is when applying scales to like at the tank, it gives them a flat shield, which is actually pretty large. It's a 30-second cooldown, so it's applied very, very frequently, so less absorption is probably good. I think the tanks that get hurt by this the most is probably like Brewmaster. Brewmaster, I mean, having more absorption was always nice for them. Ebon Might grants 8% of the Evoker's primary stat, was 10%. So this is about a 20% overall nerf. I mean, this is good because with how multiplicative Evoker damage scaling is, lowering it like this is going to bring Augmentation way more in line. Like if you go look at logs, Augmentation is, or it was by far like the biggest damage dealer, just because of how everything multiplied together. So having this scaled back slightly is good, I think. You don't want it to be so oppressive that Augmentation has to fill slots. Preservation. Spirit Boom healing increase has been reverted. So, I mean, they changed this a couple weeks ago, and I personally, after having played Preservation, I don't think Spirit Bloom needs a buff. So it being reverted back, totally fine. Their healing is in a really solid spot for the most part. Rewind recovers 33% of damage taken in last 5 seconds, was 40. So a slight nerf to Rewind. Rewind is still going to be an extremely good talent. A third of your health for the entire raid is very, very, very strong. It comes into play on a lot of fights, stuff like Rashok, where the whole raid drops to 5% on one of the last slams. You just rewind, and suddenly you're all safe. Extremely good. This nerf is not really going to impact it a lot. So some mage changes. Looks like to set bonuses for Arcane and Fire. So the 2 set for Arcane, duration of Forethought has been increased to 20 seconds, was 15 seconds. And the 4 set requires consuming 3 clear casting stacks to empower your next missiles, was 6. After consuming 3 clear casting arcane missiles, your next arcane missiles will deal 150% increased damage to the primary target and 100% increased damage to the secondary target. And they fixed an issue with arcane missile volley reach extending far further. Well, this is good because you don't want to pull stuff that you're not intending to pull, and this has been a problem with auto proc stuff in the past, so changing that is nice. I mean, I can't say how impactful this is. Because, like, do you really care about clear casting arcane missiles and then your next missiles is dealing increased damage? Like, this just feels like kind of a very meh change. I mean, going from 6 to 3 is nice, but, like, is it going to be enough for you to still want to cast these things? I kind of don't think so. Fire. 2 set bonus increases critical strike damage by 4%, was 3%. Very slight. Now increases, the 4 set now increases critical strike damage bonus of Searing Rage by 150%, as opposed to 100. We're aware of an issue with the following crit damage bonuses not attributing the correct amount of damage to ignite when an ability critically strikes. Overflowing Energy, Wildfire, and Searing Rage. This issue will be resolved in next week's PTR build. So they're just packing a little bit more punch into Mage's Critical Strike. And it sounds like there was a bug where damage wasn't applying properly to ignite. I mean, that's been around for a while. Attributing stuff to ignite has been really difficult in the past, so I'm glad that they're trying to change it. Some monk changes. Jade Serpent Statue's Soothing Mist healing increased by 40%. I mean, I don't think anyone outside of Mistweaver ever plays this, and I think for Mistweaver it's pretty low healing overall. But I mean, a buff is a buff. Cool, I guess. Mistweaver 2-set change. Chi Harmony now stores 20% of all healing, was 15%. Oh, decent buff there. Healing Elixir has been redesigned as a passive effect. You consume a Healing Elixir when you drop below 35% health and are not in a loss of control effect, instantly healing you for 15% of your max health. You generate 1 Healing Elixir every 30 seconds, stacking up to 2 times. So this used to be an active that you would press, and you had to take it as a talent. So I'm assuming it's still being left as a talent. They're just making it from an active ability to a passive ability. And whenever you drop below 35%, it's going to heal you for 15% of your max health with 2 charges. I mean, okay, sure. Unison's range increased to 40 yards, was 15 yards. Not exactly sure what this is. Windwalker. Continuing to monitor the set bonus and the feedback around it, as the auto attack trigger was not accomplishing the intended goal of providing Windfoot only during lulls and quiet points in the rotation. So Windfoot was their 2-set bonus. We've updated the bonus to trigger off all melee ability damage and normalized trigger frequency. So this is really good. A lot of Windwalkers have complained that Blizzard just tried to add in on-hit effects from auto attacks. And the problem with that is because a lot of their abilities either reset their swing timer or prevent auto attacks from happening. Spinning Crane Kick, you're not auto attacking. Fist of Fury, you're not auto attacking. I think stuff like Expel Harm was resetting your swing timer. So having it proc off all melee abilities and normalizing trigger frequency is good. Normalizing trigger frequency just means that if there are periods where you're off the boss, it's going to be less negative for you. Like, for instance, if it's 3 or 4 procs a minute and you're off the boss for 10 seconds, well, that's not a big deal because you're going to be on the boss more and you'll still be utilizing those procs per minute. Whereas if it was just a random proc and not normalized, you having any uptime off the boss is bad. Because obviously if you're not hitting it, you're not proccing. Anyway, so 2-set bonus, blackout kick damage increase is now 150%, was 100. That seems good. 4-set bonus, cooldown reduction increased to 2 seconds, was 1 second. Cooldown reduction of what? Oh, I think their 4-set was, it reduces cooldown of like RSK, Whirling Dragon Punch, Storm Earth and Fire maybe. I know a couple of their rotational abilities are baked into this, so having it increased to 2 seconds from 1 second, that seems pretty good. It's probably like Fist of Fury, Rising Sun Kick, and Whirling Dragon Punch. They're big hitters, on the 10 to 20 second cooldown. Fixed an issue that prevented Windfoot from being correctly consumed when Spinning Crane Kick was used. Yep, this is part of the auto attack trigger because they can't auto attack while spinning crane kicking. Fixed an issue that caused Windfoot to be consumed when Dance of Chi-Ji empowers a spinning crane kick. So this is the talent that makes their spinning crane kick do like a boatload more damage. These are kind of tied together. Fixed an issue that prevented Dance of Chi-Ji from granting blackout reinforcement. Again, these are issues that are all tied to auto attacking. 2-piece set bonus. Windfoot now triggers off melee abilities in addition to auto attacks and has been shifted to normalized proc model. Yep, so this is good. Having it trigger off all melee abilities rather than just your auto attacks is perfect. It's a good change. Well, some paladin changes. So Holy, all healing reduced by 5% was 3%. That's perfectly fine. Holy Paladin is definitely like the strongest healer right now. Having it reduced and brought in a little more in line with other healers is nice to see. Hopefully this makes Paladin a little less guaranteed of a spot. Allows for some comp diversity. Hand of Divinity now increases healing of Holy Light by 40%, was 80%, so that's a pretty significant nerf. Saved by the Light's Absorb Shield increased by 50%. This is always nice to see. You know, things where like raid members dip low and you have to save them. Having more of an Absorb Shield is nice. It's not going to impact their overall healing too much, so nice little change. Blessed Focus now increases healing of Glimmer of Light by 40%, was 25%. So that's a pretty decent increase to healing from Glimmer of Light. Glimmer of Light is whenever you Holy Shock something, it puts a buff on your target for like 30 seconds. And then whenever you're hitting stuff with Holy Shock, and I think Judgment now, it does a small bit of healing or damage, if you know whether the Glimmer's on an enemy or a friendly. So this is nice, more healing based off of it. Merciful Aura healing is now increased by 20%, was 50% while Aura Mastery is active. Merciful Aura healing increased by 15%. So this is just, I think, players affected by your auras get like a small passive healing. It's very, very, very small. Having it increased by a little is fine. And it seems like they nerfed it a lot while under Aura Mastery. Okay. Touch of Light healing now increased by 500%, was 700%. So that's a pretty big nerf. Word of Glory healing increased by 10%. I don't think this is super impactful. Word is like okay, but in raid specifically, you aren't using Word to spot that often. Barrier Faith now creates an absorb based on 25% of healing done, was 50%. This is a good nerf. This is a very, very, very strong shield. It's a little overpowered. Aura Mastery now increases effectiveness to Devotion Art to 12%, was 15%. So this just makes Devo Aura weaker under Aura Mastery. Again, probably good. Aura Mastery plus Devo is a very, very strong raid cooldown, and having it toned down slightly just for Holy is good, because this means that other healers might see a little bit more play. When Holy brings the best healing and the best tools, it's like a lock for a spot, so having these things brought more in line means you might see more Mistweavers or more Disc Priests. And we like seeing the comp diversity. So Protection, 2-set bonus, now grants damage reduction instead of armor, maximum stacks reduced to 5, each granting 2% damage reduction. It was 10 stacks at 1% armor. So I think overall it's a good change. Armor is kind of a weird thing. I would much rather have flat damage reduction instead of armor. Because obviously armor only impacts physical stuff, it doesn't impact spells at all, so just having flat damage reduction means you're going to mitigate spells better. And a lot of these tanks, their weakness is magic damage, so this is nice. I think this is still tied to the Consecrate, though. I don't like having stuff built into Consecrate. I think it's weird. Like, I understand, I like the theme of placing a Consecrate down. I don't like that you have to redrop it every time you move, like, more than 4 or 5 yards. I honestly wish they'd make a talent that would just make Consecrate like a 10 to 20 yard radius, like a big circle around you, and you could just stand in it. Or make it so it moves with you, you know, give you a talent that makes it move with you for a period of time. That'd be nice. Retribution. Due to previous bugs with targeting issues on Wrathful Sanction, the ability was a bit undertuned. Following these bug fixes, we're retuning the set bonus to better hit our tuning targets for the set bonus. Additionally, with the amount of uptime that the 4-set bonus provides, it was overperforming in tandem with a few of the Retribution talents located deeper in the tree. We appreciate everyone's feedback and playtesting, and we'll keep making adjustments to the set's power as necessary over the course of PTR. So they're just trying to bring in the set bonus in line. I think Rhett's performing pretty well right now in the PTR. 2-set bonus. Expurgation now deals 30%, was 50. Wrathful Sanction now deals 50%. Up to 4 nearby enemies was 20. Okay, and the 4-set Echoes of Wrath now causes your next Templar's Verdict and Divine Storm to deal damage a second time for 25% effectiveness, was 50%. So yeah, overall, some nerfs. Which is good. You don't want any outliers. And you'd rather have these small nerfs to like set bonuses than have your class nuked, so not a bad deal. Priest, Power Word Life now costs 2.5% mana, was 0.5%. It's kind of inconsequential. Power Word Life cooldown decreased to 15 seconds, was 30 seconds, but its cooldown is no longer decreased when cast on targets below 35% health. Is now only usable on targets below 35% health, and healing is increased by 500% and no longer increases healing on targets below 35. So this is fine, I think. I mean, so my problem with Power Word Life is that, especially with heal sniping, it's sometimes difficult to get it on the target at 35%. So maybe if they make it only usable at 35%, it'll always hit for this big 500% increase. Because there are times where, like, the person's at 30%, you go to target them, you hit them with Power Word Life, they get a hot from something, it brings them over this threshold, and suddenly it's doing pathetic healing. But maybe if they code this properly, it'll always hit for this 500% increase, which is going to be nice. So some discipline change, and a lot of discipline changes. Wow. It's probably good because discipline is one of the weaker healers at the moment. It's still very awkward to play. So developers note, we heard feedback that Shadow Covenant and the talent tree in general would be more flexible and interesting if Shadow Fiend were a more viable option. So Shadow Covenant now grants a higher damage increase with Shadow Fiend. Okay. We've also tied in the duration with the duration of Shadow Fiend or Mindbender to make using Inescapable Torment more enjoyable. Finally, we've reduced the overall value of Shadow Covenant, particularly with Mindbender, and distributed some of the power into Penance. That's nice. To nudge Discipline a bit closer towards consistent damage instead of heavy burst windows. Okay, that's perfect. Right now, Disc's healing style revolves exclusively around, like, I think 22 to 30 second ramps. So having it more distributed, where it's more of a flat line of healing, I think is overall good. I think burst healing windows can be interesting, but I feel like a lot of players are probably going to struggle to optimize that perfectly. So Ultimate Penitence now takes into account your primary target. Will prioritize healing bolts if an ally is selected, or damaging bolts if an enemy is selected. Damage and healing increased by 25%, and an initial tick has been added. This is their new talent. I'm sure you've probably seen videos of it on Reddit. Go up into the air, fire penance bolts at everything. Having it prioritize is nice. Like if you accidentally select an enemy, and then you press it, it's going to do damage bolts. If you have an ally selected, it's going to do healing bolts. So you need to be very careful with what you're targeting. Having the damage and healing increase is nice, plus an extra tick of it. So pretty decent buff to it. Embrace Shadow has been removed. Twilight Corruption remains in its location and continues to increase Shadow Covenant's effectiveness by additional 10%. All of these seem very Shadow Covenant focused, which I think has been kind of lackluster. Shadow Covenant duration now matches duration of Mindbender at 12 seconds. Was 7 seconds with Mindbender, so that's a pretty decent buff. Shadow Covenant now grants 10% shadow damage and healing increase with Mindbender, or 25% with Shadow Fiend. Was 25%. I mean, this makes sense because Mindbender is a shorter cooldown than Shadow Fiend, so like bringing it slightly down. Because Mindbender is 1 minute as opposed to Shadow Fiend's 3, so having Shadow Fiend be more powerful with less casts makes sense. Shadow Covenant's visuals have been improved. Sure. Penance damage and healing increased by 15%. That's a pretty sizable buff. We like that. I like Penance hitting hard. It's a fun spell. It's a cool visual. It feels like it should be doing a lot. Mindbender and Void Summoner have swapped locations. I mean, it's kind of inconsequential. Void Summoner reduces cooldown of Shadow Fiend by 4 seconds, or Mindbender by 2. Again, this goes back to this talent up here. Because Shadow Fiend's a longer CD, you want it to reduce it by more. So it's going to give you more flexibility in whether you choose Shadow Fiend or Mindbender. You're not punished inherently by playing Shadow Fiend. Fixed an issue causing Mindbender to sometimes return to your side. Yep. Crappy pet AI. Glad that they changed these. Expiation increases Mind Blast and Shadow Word Death damage by 15 and 30%. Was 10 and 20%. I mean, so more damage, therefore more healing via Atonement. Sure. Wheel and Will increases Smite's damage by 20%, was 12%, and Power Word Shield by 10% per stack, was 5%. So just adding more power into Smite into Power Word Shield. Yeah, that's great. Disc needs a lot of help right now, so we're good with this, I think. Holy Priest. With Flash Heal and Heal buffs, Trail of Light was overperforming, so we're reducing its value to match its previous power level. We're also increasing the value of Pontifex since it was an unpopular talent. That's a bit of an understatement. I don't think anybody was taking Pontifex. Finally, we're making Echoes of Light periods faster so that it's more responsive to damage. So that's kind of nice. So Trail of Light, that's when you healed someone and you switch targets. If you healed the second target, the first target would get a percentage of healing. It makes sense that they've buffed Flash Heal and Heal, that they would also nerf Trail of Light. You don't want it to be too powerful. Pontifex, that was the talent that I believe after critting, if you crit heal or flash heal, it would make your next holy words do more healing. And it was very bad, so I don't think anyone ever took it. I don't think you took it in any build ever. Not dungeons, not raids, nothing. So making it better, maybe people will play it. Finally, making Echoes of Light periods faster. Echoes of Light is the Holy Priest Mastery. Whenever you heal something, it puts a hot on the target. Having it tick faster is great, because if it's like a 6 to 10 second hot, a lot of that is sometimes wasted. So having it healing come in faster when you need it is perfect. Prayer of Mending Healing is decreased by 5%. Yeah, this is a very overtuned spell right now, especially with this current tier bonus, so having it brought a little more in line is nice. Prismatic Echoes now increases healing of Echo of Light by 4 and 8%, with 6 and 12%. This is good. Echo of Light healing decreased by 15%. Again, like these are all what makes Holy Priest extremely strong in raid right now, so having it brought down a little is good. Divine Images, Dazzling Light, and Blessed Light healing has been decreased. This is one of their capstones. Using Holy Word summons, like, I think it's like a Naru that follows you around and like mimics your spells. And it's doing a kind of a ridiculous amount of healing, so good changes. Trail of Light replicates heal or flash heal for 13 and 25% as opposed to 18 and 35%. So it's a pretty small nerf, but a nerf nonetheless. Pontifex increases healing done by Holy Words by 20% as opposed to 10%. Good. I still can't see this being an amazing talent, but maybe with these buffs it'll allow it to be picked for something. I wonder if this makes crit just a better stat for Holy. I know crit is already a pretty decent stat, but I wonder if it outpaces mastery with some of these buffs. Maybe. Echo of Light heals every 2 seconds and lasts 4 seconds. Was heals every 3 and lasts 6. Okay, so it ticks a little faster. Yeah, I mean, that's good. There's some rogue changes. Actually, not too many rogue changes considering they're getting reworked. Airborne Irritant has been moved to the class tree. Was Outlaw. Has been adjusted. Blind is a 50% reduced cooldown, 40% reduced duration, and applies to all enemies near the target. So like an AoE blind? I mean, it's kind of interesting for Mythic Plus. It's going to allow you some more frequent CC. 50% reduced cooldown. I think blind is, what, 2 minutes? Without talents? So having it up more often is nice, for sure. 2 minutes is a bit awkward for a CC. I wonder how this applies to PvP, though. Really curious how this applies to PvP. Anyway. Marked for Death has been removed. That's fine. Nobody was taking that talent, so redesign it. Assassination, 4-set bonus, and Venomous Explosion damage has been increased by 230%. It's a pretty sizable buff. That's good. Caustic Spatter damage increased to 35%, was 30. Another small buff. Dashing Scoundrel is now a 1-point talent, was 2, so you're getting another talent point. Indiscriminate Carnage duration is now 10 seconds, was 3 seconds. And Scent of Blood increases agility by 2 and 4%, as opposed to 1.5 and 3. I mean, I'm going to be honest, I don't think these changes are going to make Assassination any more appealing. Sub is already very good at what it does, and I think with the Outlaw changes, Outlaw is looking to be pretty good for single target. I don't know. They need to do some more with Assassination, especially when it comes to AoE. Like, I don't think this makes AoE any more appealing as Assassination. Like, why would you play it in dungeons when you could just play Outlaw or Sub when they're both, like, easier and better? Assassination is, like, just a little too awkward to make work in dungeons properly. Anyway. Outlaw, Grand Melee, Roll the Bones, has been adjusted, now increases damage by 5%, and Blade Flurry deals 10% additional to nearby targets. That seems good. This could be really interesting for AoE if you could manage to secure a Grand Melee. So I wonder if you're going to go to a more proactive rolling build. Right now with Outlaw, you don't typically roll your buffs. Like once you get Skull and Crossbones, you just leave it forever. But maybe with this change, you're going to actively want to roll for Grand Melee more often. So Crackshot damage with Dispatch reduced to 75% of normal damage, was 100%, so slight nerf there. That's fine. Dread Blades has been removed. Again, fine. Nobody played this talent. Nobody liked this talent. This is the Legion artifact active ability. I'm fine with it being gone personally. I don't even remember what it shares with. It shares with something, and so I know it was never taken. It was a choice node. Oh, Subtlety, Stiletto, Staccato, and Stunning Secret have been removed. I think this was the passive that reduced the cooldown on Shadow Blades, which you took for single target just because there was nothing else to really take. But again, you didn't ever feel it. It didn't feel like it was doing anything impactful. Gormaz's Bite cooldown reduced to 45 seconds, was 1 minute. Okay, secret damage or secret technique damage increased by 12%. That's a nice buff. Because secret technique is a lot of damage and it scales in single target and AoE. So cool. Yeah, sure. Might have to play around with Rogue some. So some Shaman changes. Elemental. Forset has been redesigned when consuming Primordial Wave and for 10 seconds afterwards. Lava Burst burns your target for 25%, additional damage over 4 seconds, and for 10 seconds. Each cast of Chain Lightning causes your next Lava Burst to hit up to 3 additional targets affected by Flame Shock for 100% of normal damage. So you're going to be able to chain your Lava Bursts? I think this is good. The Forset they had designed originally was built around like Lightning Bolt, and Lightning Bolt does almost no damage in the Lava build. So having it like sync up with Chain Lightning instead, and then cause your Lava Burst to basically be a Chain Lightning, that seems pretty decent. That could be fun. It sounds fun. I can just imagine multiple Lava Bursts coming out at once. That seems pretty cool. I don't know how much damage it's going to do, but sure. Because when you're playing this fire build, Lava Burst is most of your damage. So awkwardly swapping to Lightning Bolt seems kind of counterintuitive. But seems fun in AoE. Okay. Restoration. Developers note, with Riptide, Healing Surge, and Healing Wave doing a lot more healing, Ancestral Awakening's power was increased beyond the intended levels. So they've nerfed Ancestral Awakening. Now heals for 10 and 20%, was 15 and 30. Now prefers to heal injured players instead of always healing the lowest health player. So this is just improving the smart healing, and they've brought the healing down a little bit. Ancestral Awakening is like, I think it's when you crit, it spawns like an elemental spirit that heals what was the lowest target. Now it's just an injured player. But I'm sure with the advent of quick, fast, or instant heals, Ancestral Awakening was probably a little too powerful. Obviously, when you're casting 3-second chain heals, it does a little less than when you're spamming Riptides every second. 2 set has been adjusted. Tidal Reservoir. Is that spelled properly? That looks like it's wrong. Now heals for 15% of all Riptide, was 20%, and now lasts 15 seconds, was 10. So a duration increase, but a slight healing nerf. I don't think that's super impactful. I think Resto will still be fine. 4-set bonus has been adjusted. Chance to create a new Riptide has been reduced to 5%. Yeah, so they're just bringing Riptide in. They don't want it to be like the new Rejuvenation where you just blanket the entire raid and that's all you do. You should have to cast active heals. I feel like only hotting the raid's kind of boring, and I don't know, not my thing. So some Warlock changes. Affliction 4-set had been redesigned. Soul Rock grants 3 Umbrifire Kindling, increases the damage of your next Malefic Rapture by 50% or your next Seed by 60%. Additionally, causes Rapture to extend the duration of your damage over time effects and Haunt by 2 seconds. I mean, having your dots extended is kind of cool. I know there was a complaint a couple weeks ago that people were having to recast Haunt in the middle of their burst window, which felt awkward. So having duration extended with Soul Rot seems good. And it scales well with AoE and single target because it affects Rapture and Seed. I don't know how important this is for Affliction. I know they're already performing quite well. So, I mean, this is probably fine. I think Warlocks are kind of always in a good spot. It's hard to fail when there's 3 good specs to choose from. Demonology, a lot of demonology changes, and this is probably stemming from the backlash after they tried changing it a couple weeks ago when they neutered the spec. So, all Nether Portal demons damage increased by 30%. When Nether Portal ends, you summon a Pit Lord that blasts your target for fire damage every 1 second for 10 seconds. Cool. Demonic Tyrant has been increased. I mean, that's funny because they just nerfed that a couple weeks ago, so I guess they're bringing that back. Reign of Tyranny has been redesigned. Summon Demonic Tyrant empowers 5 additional wild imps and deals 10% additional damage for each demon he empowers. It's just weird that they would nerf Demonic Tyrant because they didn't want to bake too much power into that window, and then a couple weeks later they just revert all those nerfs and then put a bunch more power back into your Demonic Tyrant. But I think with this line, empowers 5 additional imps, it's going to be 5 imps plus what he was already doing, and I think he prioritized stronger demons beforehand. So that seems good, because before it was kind of weird in that it would only do 5 pets total. So now it's going to do 5 imps plus the 5 pets. Because you want it to empower stuff like Felguard, or your Grimoire Felguard, or your Vile Fiend, whatever else you can summon, your Dreadstalkers. Those are the important ones to empower. Imps are pretty minor, but having it do 5 imps plus the major pets is nice. Fixed an issue where you're permanently summoned Felguard but not benefit from Demonic Tyrant. That seems like a big deal, so that's a good fix. And then all the rotational abilities got increased. Demon Bolt by 30%, Hand of Gul'dan by 25%, Wild Imp by 25%, Implosion by 25%, Shadow Bolt by 30%, Dreadstalkers by 25%, and Grimoire Felguard by 30%. I mean, people were complaining that demo was in kind of a lackluster spot, that the fillers did no damage. So I guess having these do more damage is nice. I don't really like the playstyle of Demonology, but I could see why other players do. So Immutable Hatred has been redesigned. Primary Felguard's Legion Strike deals 100% increased damage to its primary target. Your primary Felguard deals physical damage after auto-attacking the same enemy 3 consecutive times. So Legion Strike is like the extra active ability you can get. I think it's a talent choice for your Felguard. Deals 100% increased damage, so it does more damage on single target. That's nice, because it also cleaves, I believe. Your primary Felguard deals physical damage after auto-attacking the same enemy 3 consecutive... Okay, so they're just baking in more single target to it. Cool, that makes it more appealing for AoE and single target? Sure. 2 set's been redesigned. Demon Bolt now applies a Doom brand that explodes after 20 seconds, dealing shadow damage to nearby enemies. Hand of Gul'dan reduces the duration of your active Doom brands by 1 second. Oh, that's nice. So the more you can turret, the faster you can get this Doom brand to explode. It's a nice little cycle there. Again, being rewarded for being positioned properly and being able to chain cast is always nice as a ranged. I think it gives you a much higher skill ceiling. Doom brand damage increased by 35%. That's good because people were saying the set bonus is pretty trash. Chance for Doom brand to summon a Doom Fiend has been increased. Cool. Forset has been redesigned. When Doom brand explodes, you have a chance to summon the Doom Fiend that casts 5 Doom Bolt volleys before departing. Each volley deals shadow damage up to 4 nearby enemies. Okay. So, slight AoE buff. Destruction. Rain of Fire damage increased by 15%. And then a 2 and 4 set redesign. Bolts from Dimensional Rifts now deal 25% of damage dealt to nearby enemies. Immolate periodic damage with a chance to generate, or grant rather, a charge of Dimensional Rift. Dimensional Rift can now summon a powerful Flame Rift, which blasts 20 Searing Bolts that deal fire damage and an additional fire damage over 10 seconds. Okay, this is a nice change. The problem with Dimensional Rift before is that it was exclusively a single target spell, and the tier sets were making you pick it. So it was going to be a useless pick that you would never want to use at AoE or Mythic Plus. And obviously, you want your sets to be good in Raid and Mythic Plus, not just Raid. So having it designed to hit enemies near you is pretty sweet. Having Immolate chance to grant you a charge is nice, especially because in dungeons you're going to have more Immolates out, which gives you more chances to have Dimensional Rift. So it's going to scale in AoE. So that's a good change. That makes Destro more bearable, I think. And then lastly, we've got some warrior changes. Rallying Cry now increases current and max health by 10%, was 15. So, you know, a 33% nerf to Rallying Cry. I don't think this is going to make it any worse, really. Like, it's still a fine cooldown. It does what it needs to. Inspiring Presence has been removed. I don't even know what this talent is. I'd have to look. The fact that I don't know what it is means it's probably bad. And people weren't picking it. So removing talents that people don't pick is always good. I like how active they've been with these class changes. You know, trying to make unappealing talents more appealing, or just total redesigns of bad talents. Arms, slam damage increased by 25%. I think slam is still pretty trash. People don't like pressing it for a reason. It feels like it doesn't do anything. It lacks the chonk of Mortal Strike and Execute. Why would I ever press slam if I don't have to? It's a complete filler spell. But it's free damage, so sure. Improved slams, crit damage increased. Reduced to 10%, was 30%. I mean, this just makes sense. If they're going to buff slam damage, they're going to reduce the crit damage from the talent. Don't want it to be too out of control, because obviously you don't want to have to press slam over Mortal Strike, so you have to keep it in line a little bit if you're buffing it. And protection, 2-set bonus has been slightly redesigned. Consuming Bleeds now grants a damage taken reduction to the warrior. Instead of applying a damage dealt reduction to the target, now consumes 40% of bleed damage, was 100%. I mean, this just makes sense. So having it apply a damage reduction to the warrior instead of applying a damage reduction to the target. Obviously, if you're in a raid and there's a boss who's applying AoE damage or doing AoE damage to the raid, having the boss do less damage affects the entire raid, whereas having the warrior takes less damage only affects the warrior. I don't think you want a tank set built around the boss doing less damage to the whole raid, because that would obviously make that tank a little too appealing, and then people are only going to want to play, Prot Warrior. Consumes 40% of remaining bleed, was 100%. That's fine. From what I was reading, the 100% was a little too strong. It was doing too much damage. So having it consume 40%, okay, cool. Bring it more online. And then 4-set bonus, Thunderous Roar cooldown reduction increased to 3 seconds, was 1. So this is just going to allow you to get Thunderous Roar more often. It's kind of nice. It's a pretty hard-hitting ability, and it generates rage. So having more of this is nice. I like these little cooldowns that give you a big boost, like every 45 seconds to 1 minute. So having more of that, cool. I like that. And that is all the PTR changes for this wave. I mean, they've been posting these pretty consistently. Every week or two, they come out with a whole batch just like this. I'd say overall some pretty good changes in here. I like the talent redesigns. I like them bringing Baron and Holy Paladin and Augmentation Evoker, because those are kind of outliers. And then buffing lesser used specs like Disc Priest or Windwalker. That's pretty nice. And then a couple set redesigns for sets that were less than ideal. The Destro set, I think, is a pretty big win here. So overall, some pretty good changes. And I'm excited to play around with some of these. I still haven't really decided what I want to play next tier, so that's kind of up in the air. Definitely going to be some more fiddling pre 10.2. Just maybe a couple weeks of doing dungeons, I don't know. But yeah, thanks everyone for watching. I will be streaming on Twitch, twitch.tv/Veronyx, VERONYX. I'll be doing some hardcore stuff. I've got a 35 warrior now and a 34 mage, so we're kind of just playing those two. And then eventually I'll be back to more retail stuff. Right now we're just raid logging. We are working on Mythic Sark, so hopefully we'll get CE here within the coming weeks. And yeah, feel free to leave any comments below. If you have any questions or thoughts to add, I'd love to hear from you. I love discussing these things. Obviously, I don't know everything about these classes, but I try to stay mostly well informed. But I appreciate everyone watching, and we'll see you next time. Peace.